You are about to enter the world of Sleepy Historian, a place where time stretches and the quiet of winter surrounds you. Tonight, we will explore a period long past, yet ever present in its cold and shadow, the medieval winter. The nights were long, the days short, and the darkness unrelenting. You may feel the chill as you listen, or the slow weight of quiet pressing in. This is normal. Allow it to settle as you sink into a slow, steady rhythm with the story. Imagine a small medieval village, its rooftops blanketed in snow, smoke rising gently from chimneys. You hear the faint crackle of firewood, the soft scraping of boots across frosted ground. It is evening, and most of the villagers are indoors, wrapped in layers of wool, huddled near their hearths. The wind moans between buildings, carrying with it the sharp bite of frost. Even from this distance, you feel the pull of winter's grasp, slow but inexorable. The darkness comes early, and with it, a sense of waiting, of time stretching indefinitely. Medieval people lived not just with cold, but with an interpretation of winter shaped by belief. They watched the shortening days, the retreat of the sun, and wondered about forces beyond their understanding. Some thought the darkness was alive, filled with spirits, creatures, and omens. Others turned to ritual, wards, prayers, and ceremonies meant to soften winter's cruelty. You might sense their vigilance, their careful attention to small preparations, as though every action mattered, and the consequences of neglecting even the smallest detail were known, if unspoken. Walk slowly with them in your mind. You may notice the quiet rhythm of survival, stacking firewood, checking stored grains, mending clothing. Each task is unhurried but essential. There is no rush. Winter is patient, and so must they be. Every movement expends energy that cannot be replaced. Every choice carries weight. Hunger is slow, frost is slow, and the long, dark nights are unrelenting. You will feel the patience required to endure the slow progression of days that seem to stretch forever. Even as you listen, you might feel the pressure of waiting. For some, it is the approach of the first heavy snow. For others, it is the anxiety of whether their winter provisions will last. Imagine a family watching the sky each evening, noting the winds shift, the formation of ice on the windows. The body slows in response to cold. Fingers stiffen, joints ache, and the mind drifts into a quiet state of vigilance. Yet there is no immediate crisis, only a continuous undercurrent of challenge. In this world, stories and superstition served a practical purpose. Tales of spirits and frost demons, of night creatures that prowled in the dark, were not merely for entertainment. They guided behavior. They encouraged caution, reinforced social norms, and provided a framework for understanding why winter could be so unforgiving. Imagine listening to a villager recounting such a story by a fire. The flames cast soft shadows across the walls, the wind outside rattling the roof, and each word slows the passage of time. You feel both the weight of belief and the calm rhythm of human life enduring in a harsh environment. Let your thoughts drift to the slow accumulation of fatigue. The medieval mind and body, unshielded from modern heating or abundant food, endured a daily tension between warmth and cold, light and darkness, sufficiency and scarcity. Each day, you wake to the same challenges. Each night, you sleep under the uncertain watch of winter. You feel the monotony as it presses against your own awareness. Yet there is comfort in the constancy. Nothing arrives suddenly, nothing surprises. You simply live in the measured unfolding of days. And with that, a certain stillness enters your mind. Now, picture the village landscape through your own eyes. The snow-laden fields stretch beyond the horizon. Thin smoke spirals from chimneys. Villagers move slowly, carrying firewood, checking fences, feeding animals. The cold has a shape. It creaks through wooden floors, stiffens your joints, and whispers against your ears. Time itself seems heavier in winter. You notice details slowly. The subtle frost patterns on the windows, the careful layering of clothing, the lingering scent of smoke mixed with pine and frozen earth. All these small elements create an immersive sense of environment, where survival is constant yet understated. The first 60 seconds of your journey are critical. Here, you are gently introduced to winter's unyielding nature. There is no sudden danger, no violent event. Instead, there is inevitability. Snow will fall, fire must be tended, food must be rationed. Some did not rise again after harsh winters. Some answered only partially when called to the fields or animals. You may sense this slowly, almost imperceptibly, as part of the ongoing tension, yet it is never urgent. The calmness of the narration is the contrast to the harshness of the environment itself. You may also notice small rituals of endurance, lighting fires, checking grain stores, performing simple superstitions to ward off spirits. Each act is unhurried, deliberate, and repetitive. They form a rhythm you can follow, a quiet pattern against the backdrop of cold and darkness. The villager's attention to detail is slow, meticulous, and you, as the listener, begin to mirror this pace. You are not moving through events quickly. You are existing in their extended reality. The soft CTA of this channel is embedded here. As you listen, you may consider returning to Sleepy Historian again, allowing yourself to drift in and out of sleep while time passes unnoticed. Each session offers the same gentle, immersive pacing, yet explores a different facet of human endurance. Tonight, it is the endurance of medieval people constrained by darkness and cold, guided by superstition and careful preparation. There is no resolution yet, only observation, reflection, and the slow unfolding of experience. In these opening moments, let yourself adjust to the rhythm. The cold and darkness are inevitable. You are not rushing. You are not escaping. Instead, you are walking slowly with the villagers, noticing details, observing patterns, feeling the quiet weight of winter pressing against both body and mind. It is this slow, steady immersion that allows for both retention and relaxation, where curiosity continues even as sleep threatens to claim your attention. By now, you should feel the first threads of winter tension, the sense of preparation, the subtle anxiety of dwindling resources, the long nights and short days. The environment itself is the antagonist, unyielding, patient, and constant. And yet, there's a strange calm in this reality. Slow steps, soft voices, muted colors, flickering firelight. You are ready to step further into this world, into the first phase of medieval winter survival. You wake early, though not by alarm, but by the slow intrusion of cold through the thin walls of your cabin. The first light of dawn creeps over the snow-covered landscape, soft and muted, barely illuminating the village. Your breath rises in faint clouds, condensing in the frigid air. The world feels heavier here, each movement slower, weighed down by layers of wool and the knowledge of what winter will demand. Today is like yesterday, and tomorrow will be like today, yet there is purpose in this repetition, preparation. You step outside, boots crunching against the frost-hardened ground. Villagers are already moving, some carrying logs for fire, others checking the storage of grains, barrels of salted meat, and dried vegetables. You notice the care in their movements, the deliberate placement of supplies. Each piece of firewood must be dry, stacked to allow air to circulate and prevent rot. Each barrel of food must be checked, noting the smallest signs of spoilage. The cold is not cruel in sudden bursts. It is constant, patient, and slow, and your attention must match it. There is superstition intertwined with these tasks, subtle and quiet, never spoken loudly, yet present. Before cutting the first log of the season, a villager traces a small mark on the tree's bark, a symbol meant to ward off frost spirits. Others sprinkle salt along thresholds, not for cleanliness, but to protect against wandering shadows that might sap the warmth from the home. You watch, following the gestures with a sense of ritualistic care. The acts are repetitive, almost hypnotic, yet carry the weight of survival. Food stores are measured carefully. Grains are counted and inspected. Salted fish and meat are rotated, ensuring that nothing goes stale before the first heavy snows. You can feel the tension here, though it is not violent or urgent. It is the slow gnaw of necessity. Hunger is anticipated, not sudden. You feel the mental pressure of rationing even before it becomes critical. Every barrel moved, every sack inspected, is a small victory against the long, unyielding winter. You may notice the elders whispering, recounting old stories as they work. Tales of winters harsher than the last, of frost biting deeper, of spirits lingering longer. These stories are not meant to frighten children. They're a subtle guide for attention and caution. You absorb them slowly, feeling the weight of knowledge passed through generations, and the sense that survival is both physical and mental. There's a rhythm here: work, observation, quiet reflection, work again, and through it, endurance builds. Firewood is particularly important. You join others in hauling logs from the frozen forest edge. The snow muffles your footsteps, the cold biting through your gloves. You pause often, not from exhaustion, but to observe, to measure the sky, the wind, the direction from which frost creeps across the land. Each tree felled, each branch carried, is deliberate, measured. The villagers talk in low voices, recounting superstitions. A branch falling unexpectedly is a warning. A sudden gust of wind through the pines signals a harsh storm ahead. You listen, absorb, and act with careful deliberation. In this slow, measured world, you begin to notice the physical toll. Fingers stiffen as you handle rough bark. The cold seeps into joints, making movement sluggish. Yet there is purpose in this fatigue, a constant reminder that energy is limited and every action carries weight. Even in the simple task of stacking firewood, you feel a tension that is not dramatic but enduring, a slow drain that stretches the hours into a long, measured day. By midday, your body craves warmth, yet you persist in small tasks. The village cooperates silently. Each person carries out their assigned duties with quiet diligence, understanding that winter is an adversary of patience rather than sudden cruelty. The food stores are not yet threatened, but the long darkness and cold will test them. Each sack checked, each barrel rotated, each log stacked is a small step in the slow march against environmental hostility. You may find yourself performing small superstitions alongside practical tasks. Salt on thresholds, marks on doors, whispered blessings over barrels of grain. These acts are not frantic. They are slow, deliberate, and measured. They give a sense of control in a world where control is limited. The mental comfort of ritual allows the body to endure longer periods of waiting and cold, a subtle survival advantage, though not obvious. As afternoon passes, you notice subtle changes in the light. The sun lowers quickly, shadows stretching across the snow-covered fields. Your awareness sharpens. There is no immediate threat, yet the inevitability of darkness presses in. You hear the wind rising in the distance, brushing against rooftops, bending the bare branches of trees. The villagers, like you, anticipate its arrival, making final checks on firewood, food, and the warmth of their homes. The slow tension is omnipresent, steady, and unrelenting. Evening arrives, bringing with it the first real bite of winter. You retreat to the cabin, carrying firewood, feeding animals, checking the hearth. Each action is deliberate, measured, slow. You may feel the weariness of the day, the slow mental fatigue, the awareness that tomorrow will demand the same meticulous care. This is the rhythm of survival. Repetition, observation, endurance. Sleep may beckon, but your attention remains tethered to the slow passage of time, the quiet, relentless demands of the cold. The day ends without drama. No sudden crises, no violent storms. Yet the tension persists in the constancy of winter. You understand, gradually, that survival is not a singular heroic act, but a collection of slow, deliberate decisions, each carrying weight, each requiring patience. Superstition and ritual provide a scaffold for mental endurance. guiding actions that are essential for sustaining life through darkness and cold. As you lay down for the night, near the fire, you feel the stillness pressing in. Outside, the wind moans, snow drifts against walls, and darkness surrounds the village. Inside, there's warmth, light, and the quiet repetition of rituals. You may close your eyes and drift into sleep. Yet even in slumber, the sense of environment and survival remains. This is the medieval winter, slow, patient, and enduring, a world where every day is a measured test of body and mind. The sun rises, but only briefly, a pale disk above the horizon. Its light is weak, filtered through gray clouds, and it offers little warmth against the creeping chill. You notice immediately how early the shadows stretch across the village. There is no sudden shock of night. Winter does not hurry, but the lengthening darkness is inescapable, settling gradually over the land. You feel its weight as you move, each step deliberate, mindful of the cold seeping into your boots and gloves. Villagers go about their day with quiet diligence. Tasks are repetitive, measured, and slow, yet each carries significance. Children fetch small bundles of firewood. Elders inspect the condition of stored food, and women tend to domestic chores with precise care. There is little conversation, only the soft murmur of activity against the backdrop of wind whispering through bare branches. Time feels different here. The day is both short and endless, a paradox that tugs gently at the mind. You notice how the approaching night affects perception. The snow appears darker, shadows deeper, and familiar paths seem altered by the dim light. Villagers speak in low voices, recounting legends of spirits that wander when the sun is absent. You listen, half conscious of their words and half absorbed in the rhythm of your own breathing, your body moving with slow precision. Their stories are not meant to frighten. They are reminders, subtle guidance for navigating the long, unlit hours that stretch ahead. As daylight wanes, your attention shifts to small details. A window frosted with delicate patterns, the uneven stacking of firewood against the wind, the way smoke curls from chimneys into the gray sky. These details are survival cues, unspoken yet vital. You understand slowly that winter is patient, and it does not require drama or sudden calamity to impose its will. The weight is in constancy, in the persistent dark, in the slow exhaustion of both body and mind. By mid-afternoon, the wind picks up, carrying frost across the village. The villagers sense it in the creaking of timber, the shaking of shutters, the way animals huddle closer for warmth. You, too, feel the slow pull of fatigue, not immediate but creeping. Fingers stiffen, joints ache, and the mind wanders half alert, half dreaming. Here, survival is measured not in heroic effort, but in attentive endurance, the quiet maintenance of warmth, nourishment, and vigilance. Stories and rituals mark the transition into night. Around fires, villagers tell tales of cold spirits, of wandering shadows that drain warmth and vitality. Each story unfolds slowly, allowing time to stretch, letting listeners feel the weight of winter without sudden fear. You notice the repetition, the soft cadence, and you begin to mirror it, slow, deliberate, measured thought. Even as sleep beckons, curiosity remains. You feel the tension of anticipation, the subtle pressure of nightfall pressing in. Outside, the landscape transforms. The faint light of day retreats, revealing long, dark expanses of snow-covered fields and frozen forests. Trees sway gently in the wind, their bare branches scratching the sky. You imagine the stillness, punctuated only by occasional distant sounds, the low moan of wind, the faint rustle of a creature moving cautiously through underbrush, the muted cracking of frozen ice. There is no immediate danger, yet the environment itself feels alive, pressing against you with quiet insistence. The villagers take precautions as darkness deepens. Fires are tended constantly, small rituals performed to ward off the unseen. Food stores are checked once more, Animals moved closer to warmth, clothing adjusted to guard against the cold. These actions are repeated each day, small and deliberate, a steady rhythm against the unrelenting night. Even mundane tasks become survival strategies, subtle but essential. You follow along in thought, sensing the rhythm, absorbing the weight of repeated care. Evening arrives fully, and with it, a stillness that is both calming and tense. The wind whistles softly through the rooftops, and snow begins to drift lightly from the gray sky. Villagers retreat indoors, tending fires, recounting stories, whispering quiet prayers. The night is long, unhurried, and slow to pass. Your awareness of time stretches with it, feeling both compressed and expansive, a slow meditation on endurance. Sleep comes gradually, a soft descent rather than sudden release. Even in slumber, the mind remains tethered to the environment. The cold pressing gently at your skin, the wind brushing against the walls, the shadows dancing in the flickering firelight. You feel the steady pulse of winter, its constancy, its patience, its quiet demands. In this half-sleep state, curiosity persists, attention drifts, and yet the world continues to unfold, slow but inevitable. As the night deepens, you sense the lessons embedded in darkness: patience, attention, ritual, and endurance. These are the tools that have carried villagers through centuries of long winters, guiding them through the unrelenting cold, short days, and long nights. Survival is not about heroism or sudden action. It is about measured, persistent care and the quiet acceptance of time's slow passage. The evening concludes without incident, yet the tension remains, subtle and constant. Tomorrow will bring the same short day, the same long night, the same need for attention and ritual. You are both participant and observer in this rhythm, absorbing the slow, patient pressure of the approaching deep winter, preparing mentally for the days to come. The day stretches before you, quiet and slow. There is little to do beyond small, deliberate tasks, and yet every moment carries the weight of expectation. The villagers move through their routines in near silence, checking fences, feeding animals, maintaining fires. Outside, the world is muted, coated in frost, and the sky is a uniform gray. You notice the stillness, the way snow might fall at any moment, or might linger for days, a patience that mirrors the body and mind. You spend hours observing, waiting. The air is crisp, and your breath rises in small clouds. Every movement is measured. Even the simplest action, a bundle of firewood carried from one stack to another, requires awareness. Your fingers grow stiff in gloves, your joints creak against the cold, and your body begins to register the slight fatigue of repetition. Yet there is no urgency. There is only the ongoing pressure of environment, slow and continuous, pressing upon every action. The sky hints at snow, but does not yet deliver. Clouds hang low, heavy, gray, threatening precipitation without the release. Villagers pause often, standing still to sense the wind's direction, the shifting chill, the subtle cues in animal behavior. A dog lifts its head and sniffs the air. A cow stamps its hooves against the frozen ground. You notice these details in a heightened awareness born of necessity. Each small observation is a thread in the fabric of survival, a quiet guidance toward what must be done next. Inside cabins, the light is low. Smoke rises lazily from chimneys, curling into the cold air. Fires crackle, soft and rhythmic, a steady reminder of warmth and life. You feel the slow rhythm of survival. Tasks repeated, checked, and rechecked, each essential but never hurried. Bread is examined, grain sacks rotated, salted meat inspected. The villagers' movements are deliberate, unhurried, yet attentive. Even small neglect could be costly in a harsh winter, and this subtle pressure hangs quietly over all actions. Time passes slowly. There are moments when the mind drifts, half awake, half alert. You may find yourself staring out a window at the unchanged landscape, noting the frozen fields, the skeletal trees, the the gray sky. There is no sudden threat, no dramatic intrusion, only the persistent, unyielding cold and the quiet possibility of snow at any moment. It is in this stillness that endurance is tested. You feel the mental tension, subtle and pervasive, stretching hours into an almost tangible weight. Villagers engage in quiet rituals to occupy themselves and maintain mental clarity. They hum prayers, whisper incantations, trace protective marks on doorways, and arrange talismans by the hearth. You notice the rhythm of these actions, deliberate and slow, providing reassurance against the unseen pressures of winter. Even in monotony, there is structure, and through it, a steady, almost hypnotic endurance develops. Outside, the wind shifts, brushing across rooftops and icy fields. The cold is no longer just felt. It is seen and heard in the bending of branches, the sway of distant trees, and the movement of snow along the ground. Small creatures leave tracks in the frost, animals scuttling for shelter. You observe these signs in silence, aware of the slow progression of winter and the ever-present need for vigilance. The tension is never sudden. It is slow, patient, and cumulative, a constant reminder of survival's demands. Evening settles gradually. The dimming light stretches shadows long across the village. The first hints of snow appear as tiny flakes drifting softly in the wind. Villagers stand and watch, anticipating the slow accumulation that will demand adjustments in work and attention. Fires are stoked, animals are brought closer, and last-minute inspections of food and wood are performed. Each act is deliberate, repeated, and quiet, a measure of control in a world dominated by patience and inevitability. You may notice your own body responding to this slow pressure. Muscles ache from repeated small movements, fingers stiffen against gloves, and the mind drifts in quiet cycles of thought and reflection. Yet, even as you feel this fatigue, there is a subtle calm in the constancy. Nothing occurs suddenly. There is no panic. You understand slowly that the passage of time itself is the adversary and the teacher. Each flake of snow, each gust of wind, each shift in temperature is part of a measured, unrelenting lesson in endurance. As the night deepens, the snowfall becomes steadier. The world outside is hushed, muffled under white, and the villagers settle near fires, performing quiet tasks by candlelight. You may drift in half-sleep, aware of the chill, aware of the steady accumulation of snow, aware of the slow, unbroken passage of time. This is the rhythm of medieval winter, where survival is not heroic but patient, deliberate, and constant. The day concludes without incident, yet with a slow, persistent tension. Snow will continue to fall, cold will continue to press, and darkness will continue to lengthen. The villagers, and you as observer, endure not through excitement or urgency, but through repetition, observation, and careful attention. The long nights are approaching, and you are ready, in thought and presence, to meet them. The sun rises late, and soon it begins its swift retreat behind the gray horizon. Its pale light touches the village only briefly, leaving long hours of dimness that stretch relentlessly. You notice the slow shift in the rhythm of life. Each day grows noticeably shorter, and with it, a weight settles upon the mind. There is no sudden terror here, only the quiet pressure of shadows, lengthening slowly, creeping across every surface, every thought. Villagers move through their day with measured care. Children fetch firewood or check stored food, their small hands wrapped in thick wool. Adults tend to livestock, inspect fences, and monitor their meager gardens. Each task is deliberate, never rushed. There is a calm repetition, but within it, the mind senses the encroaching dark. Even a familiar path feels different in the shortened daylight. Corners are obscured, and the soft gray snow reflects less light than before. You feel the subtle mental strain, the slow accumulation of weariness. This is the essence of medieval winter perception. Short days, long nights, and an understanding of the world governed by light scarcity. Villagers tell each other quietly that spirits wander more freely during the long hours of darkness. Shadows are alive, the wind a whisper of unseen presences. You notice how every glance upward, every step across frost, carries a small, lingering awareness that the night is vast, patient, and inescapable. Inside cabins, the low light of day struggles through small windows, casting long, soft shadows across the walls. Fires flicker, but warmth barely reaches the corners of rooms. You sense the way people adjust, closer to the hearth, hands extended over flames, voices lower, movements slower. This is mental survival, a deliberate slowing of the body to match the limitations imposed by winter's light. Every thought stretches, every decision weighs more, and time itself seems to expand with darkness. The psychological weight of short days manifests subtly but persistently. Villagers often pause mid-task, staring out a frost-covered window at the gray landscape beyond. You may notice their gaze lingering on the skeletal trees, the frozen earth, the drifting snowflakes, searching for signs of movement or change. The mind becomes attuned to minute shifts, the shift of wind, the creak of timber, the soft murmur of a distant animal. Each observation is small, but it anchors survival, a mental measure against the endless hours of twilight. Stories and folklore provide a quiet framework for endurance. Tales of spirits that wander at dusk, of wandering shadows that sap warmth, are not spoken to frighten, but to guide attention and patience. You listen along, noting the deliberate cadence, the careful pacing of words, the way repetition creates a rhythm in the mind. These tales do not shock. They slow you down, weaving vigilance into the fabric of daily life. You may notice your own thoughts begin to drift, stretching with the elongated hours of dim light. One moment, your attention is on stacking firewood. The next, it wanders to the gray sky, the distant frozen forest, or the faint smoke rising from chimneys. There's a calm in this wandering, a soft awareness of time passing slowly. Yet beneath it lies the persistent knowledge. Winter is long, and every day is brief. Outside, the world itself seems quieter. Snow muffles sound. Wind carries only whispers, and movement is sparse. Villagers pass each other with muted greetings, their steps cautious against the frozen ground. You may sense the subtle tension in the air. Not urgency, not panic, but anticipatory patience. It is the knowledge that short days demand careful planning, that the dark will not rush you, yet it will not relent. Evening arrives early. Shadows converge, stretching across rooftops and snow-dusted streets. Fires are stoked higher, blankets drawn closer, and the remaining light clings desperately to the horizon. You feel the gradual compression of time, the way hours seem to collapse under the weight of darkness. Sleep may feel closer, yet your mind remains aware of the subtle dangers, cold, scarcity, and the slow march of winter days. In these long, dark hours, small rituals help maintain mental clarity. Candles are lit, meals eaten with care, prayers whispered. Villagers speak in hushed tones of past winters, of how they endured, how they survived through observation, patience, and small acts of attentiveness. You follow along quietly, sensing the rhythm, the slow pulse of survival embedded in routine, and feeling both calm and alert at once. Even as night deepens, there is no dramatic threat. The tension is constant, patient, and cumulative. The short days, the long nights, the quiet cold, all press gently on the mind and body, shaping perception, stretching time, and teaching endurance without urgency. You understand now that medieval survival in winter is not about heroics. It is about patience, awareness, and subtle attention to the world's quiet pressures. You may close your eyes for a moment, imagining the village under dusk's gray pall, fires flickering softly, shadows long and slow. There is comfort in this calm, measured tension, a recognition that time passes slowly, and that survival is a matter of careful attention, day by day, hour by hour. As this part concludes, you feel the weight of mental endurance settling over you. Short days have their psychological toll, but they also teach slow vigilance, patience, and the quiet skill of existing in a world dominated by cold and shadow. You are ready to move deeper into winter, into the next phase, where isolation and dwindling resources will further test the mind and body. The village grows quieter with each passing day. Some villagers retreat early to their cabins, tending fires and mending clothing, while others linger only briefly outdoors before the wind drives them back inside. You notice the subtle shift. Where there was once communal movement, now stillness dominates, and small clusters of people are separated by long stretches of frost and snow. In this slow separation, isolation begins to press against the mind. You move carefully along familiar paths, noticing details that might have seemed ordinary before. The delicate frost patterns along rooftops, the way a fence post leans under the weight of ice, the faint animal tracks frozen into the snow. Each observation requires patience, and in its repetition, your body and mind feel the gentle but persistent tension of enduring long hours alone. Even in company, the isolation is felt in shared quiet, where few words are spoken, and silence stretches like a visible presence between people. Inside cabins, small fires burn steadily, offering warmth but no distraction from the mind's attention. You notice how easily your thoughts wander into reflection, recalling past winters, small missteps in preparation, the rituals that must be repeated for reassurance. There is a subtle pressure here, not urgency, not fear, but the weight of constant awareness. Sleep may come, yet the mind remains tethered to the environment, scanning, noticing, anticipating. At the edge of the village, you see those who patrol for stray animals or ensure supplies are secure. They move slowly, deliberately, the crunch of snow underfoot marking each step. The wind carries sound only partially. Each creak, each faint disturbance is magnified in the stillness. You feel this too, observing and noting a quiet vigilance that is unbroken and constant, a practice of endurance, as much mental as physical. The long hours of dim light and shadow press heavily on perception. Trees sway under the weight of ice. Snow drifts shift across open fields, and clouds linger low in the sky. You may sense the slow rhythm of the environment, subtle shifts in temperature, the movement of small creatures, the occasional groan of timber. Each observation requires patience and care. There is no immediate danger, yet the environment itself becomes a demanding teacher, pressing both mind and body to maintain awareness. Even in solitude, small rituals provide structure. Candles are lit and arranged, talismans placed near windows, firewood res-tacked in a quiet pattern. These repetitive actions are not frantic, but deliberate, a way to impose order on the vast, indifferent cold outside. You notice how repetition soothes, how it instills a gentle awareness that survival depends on careful attention, patience, and the slow accumulation of small, steady actions. The sense of isolation grows as evening approaches. You may find yourself alone at the edge of a field, the village distant, the wind pressing softly against your clothing. The cold bites, yet you move deliberately, aware that haste consumes energy unnecessarily. Every decision, where to place a log, how to stack firewood, how long to wait before retreating indoors matters. The quiet tension stretches, subtle but unrelenting, teaching the mind and body endurance without dramatic crisis. You hear the wind brushing against rooftops, moaning through fences, rustling skeletal trees. The faint crackle of fire from a distant cabin reaches your ears. Snow drifts quietly in the dim light, altering familiar landmarks. Your awareness sharpens in response, even as your movements slow. This is the vigil of winter, the unbroken attention required to navigate a world of long shadows and short days, where every small observation preserves life and warmth. As darkness deepens, you settle near a fire, watching the dancing shadows along the cabin walls. The rhythm of breathing, the crackle of wood, the faint whistle of wind, all become a meditation on persistence. Thoughts may wander into half-sleep, but your mind remains tethered to vigilance. This is survival through quiet observation, a patient endurance that stretches hours into days without sudden change, yet with a persistent, cumulative tension. Sleep eventually arrives, slow and fragmentary. Even in slumber, your awareness remains subtly linked to the environment. The wind's whisper, the shifting snow, the faint groan of ice-laden trees. You understand now that medieval winter survival is as much mental as physical. Isolation shapes perception, and the slow, careful vigilance required teaches endurance, patience, and the quiet recognition of time's slow passage. By the end of this long day, the lessons are clear. Life in winter is measured, repetitive, and deliberate. Each act of attention, no matter how small, is part of a broader rhythm of endurance. You're learning to move with it, to feel the slow pressure of the environment, and to exist in a world where every hour requires quiet care and awareness. The tension is never loud, never immediate, yet it persists in the mind and body, preparing you for the further demands of deep winter. The days pass in a slow, measured repetition, each indistinguishable from the last. You rise to the pale gray light, already aware of the length of shadows, the chill that seeps into bones, and the long hours that stretch before you. There is no urgency here, no sudden danger, only the steady, patient press of winter, a rhythm that wears lightly at the body and mind. Tasks continue, feeding animals, checking stored grains, stacking firewood, tending the slow, constant fires. Each motion is deliberate, precise, but the repetition begins to weigh. You notice the subtle physical decline. Fingers stiff, muscles sore from repeated motion, joints complaining quietly under layers of wool. The body reminds you gently, insistently, that energy is finite and that endurance is a matter of careful pacing rather than sudden exertion. Inside cabins, the light is muted and dim. Fires crackle, but warmth barely reaches the corners of rooms. Villagers move slowly, conserving energy, performing repeated tasks with measured care. Even the act of stirring a pot or tending a flame carries a sense of deliberation, a quiet awareness that nothing must be wasted, nothing left to chance. The monotony presses steadily, shaping thought and movement alike. You notice the subtle mental strain as well. Days blend, hours stretch, and attention drifts. You may find yourself staring at the same frost-covered window, counting the cracks in the ice, noting the faint tracks of animals outside. The mind begins to mark time in small, deliberate increments. One log stacked, one meal prepared, one shift of clothing for warmth. Each repetition reinforces endurance, a slow mental exercise that mirrors the unchanging environment. Outside, the snow drifts and shifts, covering familiar paths, bending skeletal trees under its weight. The wind carries its soft moans, scraping against walls and rooftops. There is no dramatic storm today, no sudden calamity, only the constant, patient pressure of environment. Every step is measured, every observation deliberate. You feel the weight of unbroken monotony pressing against perception, a subtle exhaustion that is not dramatic, but cumulative. Small rituals anchor the mind against this monotony. Candles are lit at the same time each day, talismans positioned carefully near doors and windows, and prayers whispered softly. These acts are repetitive, yet comforting. They mark the passage of time, provide structure, and offer a gentle sense of control. You notice how the repetition steadies thought and movement, reinforcing the slow rhythm of survival in a world dominated by cold and shadow. The monotony is punctuated by tiny physical declines. Fingers grow stiffer despite gloves. Muscles complain from repeated bending and lifting. The weight of layers presses uncomfortably at joints. You are aware of fatigue accumulating slowly, like the snow outside, piling layer upon layer. Each movement carries its own cost, and the mind constantly calculates how much energy remains for the tasks ahead. Evening arrives, gray and soft, and you feel the pressure of darkness encroaching early. Shadows stretch across snow and rooftops. The wind hums through the skeletal trees, and the fire's warmth becomes the center of attention. You notice subtle mental shifts, attention wandering, eyes tracing repeated patterns in the frost, the mind revisiting familiar observations. There is calm in this familiarity, yet the quiet weight of endurance persists, unrelenting but measured. Sleep approaches, slow and unbroken. Yet even in slumber, the body remains aware of the subtle decline. Cold pressing gently, muscles stiffening, the quiet hum of wind through the eaves. Dreams are soft, almost imperceptible, reflecting the patient monotony of waking hours. The night is long, yet gentle, a continuation of the day's steady, unhurried lessons in survival. By the end of this long day, you understand that winter is not about dramatic trials. It is about the slow, cumulative effects of repetition, environmental pressure, and subtle decline. Survival is measured in attentiveness, in repeated small acts, in patience, and in the quiet observation of the world's slow rhythms. You are both participant and observer in this extended endurance, feeling time stretch and compress, noting the weight of monotony, and learning to move deliberately through its soft but persistent pressure. The cold has settled deeply now, pressing against every corner of the village and every layer of your clothing. Days have shortened further, the sun barely rising above the horizon before retreating again into gray. The snow has thickened in some places, drifting over paths and revealing the first signs of scarcity. Supplies stored in cellars and sheds are carefully inspected, measured, and rationed. Every small portion of food is accounted for, every bit of fuel for fire calculated with precision. You move quietly among these preparations, observing the villagers' measured actions. There is no panic here, only constant awareness. Each decision is deliberate, a bit of grain saved for later, a bundle of firewood stretched further than yesterday. The weight of scarcity presses softly but insistently, a reminder that survival is not heroic but careful, patient, and exacting. You notice the subtle tension in hands that cut slowly, chop slowly, and place items in order, as though slowing the world protects energy and life alike. Inside cabins, the fire burns steadily, a small heart of warmth in a cold world. Villagers sit or stand in quiet, performing repetitive tasks, sorting food, sewing clothing, inspecting stored meat, and monitoring the fire's fuel. Even these small actions carry mental weight. Each movement is deliberate, calculated, ensuring that nothing is wasted and nothing overlooked. You follow along, half conscious of each gesture, feeling the same slow vigilance take hold within yourself. Outside, the frozen landscape feels unchanging yet subtly hostile. Snow drifts shift slowly across open fields, skeletal trees bend under their weight, and the wind hums softly through the village. Tracks in the snow, a rabbit, a fox, a stray dog, offer hints of life, but also reminders of the scarcity that surrounds all living things. You notice the slow tension building, not sudden, but cumulative, as the environment itself demands careful attention to survive. The villagers speak softly of days gone by, when supplies were plentiful and winter seemed shorter. These conversations are quiet, reflective, almost hypnotic. They are not meant to alarm, but to anchor minds in the reality of limited resources. You hear mentions of small adjustments made to preserve food, boiling water sparingly, cooking meals smaller but more frequently, cutting wood into thinner slats to stretch the warmth. Every detail, however minor, is a lesson in prudent endurance, a constant, slow mental exercise. You notice how scarcity shapes thought. The mind begins to scan constantly, aware of every small risk, every potential inefficiency. You calculate silently. If one piece of bread is saved today, it may be needed tomorrow. If firewood is hoarded carefully, warmth may stretch a few hours longer. These calculations are subtle, repeated, and slow, the quiet pulse of survival under pressure. Evening approaches early, gray and muted, and the fire becomes the center of attention. Villagers huddle closer, feeding it slowly, stoking it carefully, guarding against waste. You, too, observe, noting the deliberate pace of preservation, the quiet strategies embedded in small, repeated actions. There's no drama, no urgency, only constant vigilance, a soft mental tension that stretches hours into days. The night deepens, long and silent. Outside, snow drifts, trees sway, and the wind hums softly. You notice the faint outlines of roofs under white, the shadows shifting in candlelight, the delicate frost patterns that have formed overnight. Even in this stillness, the mind remains aware of potential scarcity, calculating, observing, and preparing for tomorrow. Sleep comes gently, but vigilance persists, a soft tether to the world beyond the cabin walls. You feel the patient weight of scarcity, not as immediate fear, but as cumulative awareness that shapes thought and movement alike. Each small ration, each measured flame, each repeated inspection of supplies becomes a meditation on endurance. You realize that survival is not about heroic acts, but sustained attention, careful planning, and quiet vigilance over time. By the end of the day, the lessons are clear. The environment is indifferent, resources are finite, and every small act counts. Survival here is slow, measured, and persistent. You have learned to move deliberately, to observe carefully, and to feel the weight of time, scarcity, and vigilance pressing softly but persistently against mind and body. The day stretches before you, measured and unchanging. Snow drifts softly across the village, muffling sound and movement, and the wind hums through the skeletal trees with a quiet insistence. There is no urgency, no sudden crisis, only the soft pressure of time itself. You feel the subtle weight of waiting, the slow accumulation of hours that stretch with deliberate patience. Inside cabins, the villagers move with careful precision, performing repeated tasks, tending fires, checking stores, brushing snow from rooftops. Each act is deliberate, each motion measured. You notice the small, persistent fatigue creeping into muscles, the slight stiffness in joints, the gentle ache that accompanies repeated action. Yet nothing demands haste. You learn to move slowly, deliberately, matching your pace to the long, soft rhythm of winter. The quiet of the village amplifies awareness. Every creak of timber, every whisper of wind, every faint trace of movement outside becomes a signal to note. You walk slowly along familiar paths, observing subtle changes in snow drifts or animal tracks. Each observation is small, incremental, but essential. This is the vigil of endurance, where time itself is both antagonist and teacher. You notice the mind stretching in response to monotony. Thoughts drift, returning to familiar concerns. The careful rationing of food, the fire's fuel, the placement of warm clothing. Each detail is considered, sometimes repeatedly, as the slow vigilance of survival requires constant awareness. Even in apparent stillness, attention remains active, tethered to the subtle pressures of environment, scarcity, and time. Outside, the snow accumulates gently, obscuring paths and landmarks. Trees bend under their weight, wind shifts the drifts, and shadows stretch long across frozen ground. Villagers pause, standing still for moments to observe the world, to anticipate what the next hours may demand. You, too, feel the gentle, cumulative tension, the quiet weight of endurance pressing against mind and body. Evening approaches, arriving quietly but with noticeable presence. The light fades gradually, shadows lengthen, and the fire's warmth becomes central once more. Villagers gather close, performing small, repeated tasks with meticulous attention. You notice the soft mental strain that accompanies waiting. Awareness remains high, even as energy declines slowly. Time seems heavier, stretching minutes into hours without interruption. The night deepens, long and patient. Snow continues to drift outside, muffling sound and adding weight to the world. Inside, fires crackle softly, illuminating faces worn by repetition and attention. You feel the subtle deterioration of both body and mind. Fingers stiffen, muscles ache, thoughts loop gently in quiet reflection. Yet in this monotony, there is a rhythm, a calm persistence that sustains life and attention. Sleep arrives slowly, gentle and partial, never complete, tethered to the quiet vigilance required by environment and scarcity. Even in rest, the body and mind remain aware of soft pressures, cold, fatigue, wind, snow, and the patient passage of time. You sense the endless continuation of winter, the slow endurance demanded by long, quiet hours. By day's end, you understand the plateau of survival. It is not dramatic, not heroic, but continuous, patient, and cumulative. Waiting becomes a skill, endurance a quiet companion, and attention a form of persistence. The world moves slowly. You move with it, and the long, unchanging rhythm of winter shapes every thought, gesture, and breath. The village has settled into the steady rhythm of midwinter, where neither sudden calamity nor dramatic change interrupts the long, cold days. Snow covers rooftops and fields in unbroken whiteness. The wind moves quietly but persistently, a gentle, ever-present reminder of the season's endurance. Life continues in measured repetition, each act deliberate, each movement calculated. You rise to the muted light of dawn, barely peeking over the gray horizon. Even the sun seems to move reluctantly, lingering below the clouds, offering little warmth. You notice the soft ache in muscles from repeated labor, the stiffness in fingers from handling cold wood, and the gradual fatigue that accompanies long, unchanging tasks. Yet, the work continues. Firewood must be stacked, livestock tended, supplies monitored. Every small action carries weight, as it contributes directly to slow, patient survival. Within cabins, the fire crackles quietly, the soft flicker casting shadows across walls and worn furnishings. Villagers perform repeated tasks with careful attention, from sorting grains to checking stored meats, from mending clothing to adjusting blankets. Nothing is hurried. Every gesture is precise and deliberate. You feel the gentle tension of routine, the slow accumulation of mental awareness required to maintain life in a frozen world. Outside, the environment presses steadily. Snow drifts shift imperceptibly across paths. Skeletal trees bend under ice and frost, and shadows stretch longer as days shorten further. Even the faint tracks of animals moving across the snow are observed carefully, noting subtle changes that might hint at food scarcity or shifting weather. You, too, remain vigilant, following the rhythm of the world, attuned to every minor detail in a landscape dominated by repetition and endurance. Time stretches in a soft, unbroken continuum. Each hour seems to flow into the next, marked by the subtle cadence of daily tasks, the quiet hiss of wind through rooftops, and the crackle of fires tending slowly to warmth. You notice the mind adjusting to monotony, tracing familiar patterns, revisiting previous observations, and practicing gentle mental endurance. There is no rush, no panic, only the constant, patient pulse of survival. Villagers speak rarely and softly, recounting memories of past winters, passing on small strategies learned through repetition. How to stretch rations, how to stoke the fire most efficiently, how to maintain warmth through layering. These conversations are slow, deliberate, and calming. They reinforce the rhythm of the plateau, embedding mental vigilance into routine and maintaining a sense of continuity across endless hours. Evening arrives, soft and muted, with shadows converging slowly across rooftops and snow-laden streets. Fires are tended carefully, blankets drawn closer, and simple meals consumed in deliberate pace. The cold outside presses softly, yet insistently, reminding all that energy must be preserved, actions considered, and attention sustained. You feel the weight of endurance, not as alarm, but as subtle, cumulative pressure shaping mind and body alike. As night deepens, the plateau of survival becomes apparent. There is no immediate crisis, yet the environment remains an unrelenting force. Snow drifts silently, wind hums through the trees, and darkness stretches endlessly. Your mind traces the day's routines, noting minor errors or inefficiencies, adjusting for tomorrow, preparing to repeat once more. Even sleep is partial, tethered to the soft vigilance demanded by midwinter, a reminder that time, cold, and scarcity continue without pause. In these long hours, small details anchor endurance. The careful stacking of logs, the slow rotation of food supplies, the repetitive tending of animals, and the gentle observation of the weather outside. Every repeated motion reinforces survival, each act a quiet exercise in patience. There's a rhythm here, a soft tension, and an understanding that this is life in the winter plateau, slow, steady, and unbroken. By the end of the day, you sense the delicate balance maintained across mind, body, and environment. The village continues, silent yet persistent, each person moving in harmony with the demands of snow, cold, and scarcity. You feel the subtle accumulation of endurance, the patient attention, the quiet strength of living through repetition, and the constant awareness that midwinter is a long, measured trial. There is no drama, no heroism, only careful, deliberate survival in the soft but insistent pressure of environment and time. Evening arrives with a quiet inevitability, the gray light softening and fading over the village rooftops. The cold presses softly through the cabin's walls, reminding you that warmth must be tended carefully. Inside, villagers gather near fires, preparing modest evening meals with deliberate care. The movements are slow, deliberate, hands stirring pots of thin stew, slicing small portions of bread, arranging food in a manner that conserves warmth and energy. There is no rush. Each motion is measured, deliberate, a small ritual that binds the day together. You notice the stillness as plates are brought to the table. Silence stretches, shared and comfortable, broken only by the soft crackle of fire or the faint murmur of speech. Meals are eaten slowly, savored more out of habit than hunger. Each bite accompanied by the understanding that food is finite, warmth is precious, and every act must be deliberate. Even in communal presence, attention is gentle, internalized, and mindful of both environment and endurance. The body responds predictably to the long day and the soft light. Movements slow further, muscles relax under layers of wool, and joints protest only gently. You may feel your own breathing deepen, aligning with the slower rhythm of evening, each inhalation and exhalation measured and deliberate. The world itself seems to slow alongside the body, the cold wind outside softened by distance and time. Conversations are rare, brief, almost ceremonial. Words are chosen carefully, more to acknowledge presence than to inform or instruct. You notice how silence itself becomes a companion, a subtle reminder that the body and mind are adjusting to the long, harsh rhythm of winter. Even the fire's soft flicker is comforting in its repetition, a heartbeat that measures the slow passage of time. After the meal, small tasks follow in deliberate sequence. Utensils are cleaned and stacked, pots and pans returned to their places, firewood replenished. Each action is careful, precise, a continuation of the day's quiet rhythm. You feel the body's energy settling into this slower pattern, muscles relaxing, attention narrowing to the immediate surroundings, and awareness sharpening for minor details. The temperature of the fire, the subtle draft through a crack in the cabin wall, the distant sound of wind moving over rooftops. The evening stretches, shadows lengthening and blending into darkness. Villagers wrap themselves in blankets, drawing close to fires or huddling together on benches. You notice the small adjustments made to conserve warmth. Leaning toward a hearth, extending hands toward flames, turning bodies to block drafts. Each movement is practical, deliberate, and mindful, reinforcing the soft endurance required to persist through long, cold nights. Time moves gently, measured by the flicker of firelight and the shifting shadows on the walls. Your thoughts may drift, tracing the repetition of the day. The measured preparation of meals, the stacking of firewood, the careful observation of the snow-laden landscape outside. Each recollection is a quiet meditation, a slow practice in awareness and mental endurance. Outside, the world remains patient, indifferent, and vast. Snow drifts, skeletal trees bend beneath frost, and shadows stretch across frozen ground. The wind hums softly against rooftops, through chimneys, and across the village outskirts. This slow, constant pressure is subtle yet persistent, shaping the perception of those who remain awake and attentive. Even in the quiet, you feel the soft weight of vigilance, a gentle reminder that survival is measured in small, repeated acts of attention and care. As night deepens, the body continues its gradual slowing. Eyes grow heavy, movements become softer, and the mind begins to wander into half-sleep. Yet awareness lingers faintly, tethered to the environment. The soft hum of wind, the crackle of fire, the faint outline of snow-laden rooftops outside. The long day's work and repetition have guided body and mind into this calm, attentive rhythm, a slow, restorative preparation for sleep. By the end of the evening, a sense of calm persists. The villagers are quiet, fires burn steadily, and the night seems to fold gently around each cabin. The soft rhythm of survival, measured, deliberate, and patient, continues to shape perception, action, and awareness. There is no urgency, no drama, only the steady, unbroken pattern of endurance, preparation, and quiet vigilance. Even as sleep begins, partial and gentle, the environment exerts its quiet influence. The wind, the snow, the cold, all continue their patient work, teaching awareness, patience, and endurance. You realize that winter is not survived in bursts of effort, but in the careful rhythm of evening, the deliberate slowing of body and mind, and the soft vigilance that persists even in rest. The meal is finished, yet the evening is not yet complete. There is a quiet ritual that must follow, tending fires, arranging supplies, and ensuring the village's small comforts are preserved through the long night. You move slowly, deliberately, your body attuned to the gentle weight of fatigue. Every motion counts, adding a log to the fire, adjusting embers, sweeping frost from doorways. These small chores demand attention, yet they're carried out without urgency, each act measured and patient. The fire is central, a quiet heart of warmth in the cold. You approach it carefully, noting the subtle changes in its glow, the way the flames reach, shrink, or flicker under the influence of shifting drafts. Adding wood is a delicate practice. Too much, and the fire roars wastefully. Too little, and it will falter through the night. You adjust slowly, almost meditatively, feeling the heat touch your face, the light soft against your eyes, and the steady pulse of warmth under your hands. Around you, others perform similar tasks. Villagers quietly arrange blankets, tend livestock for the final time before night, and check the storage of provisions. Every action is deliberate, repeated, small. There is a rhythm here, the soft, unbroken cadence of evening chores, a sequence that has been rehearsed through weeks of cold and snow. Each movement preserves energy, safeguards warmth, and reinforces the delicate endurance of long winter nights. You notice the bodies slowing as the evening deepens. Muscles relax under the weight of exhaustion. Joints protest softly after hours of careful work, and the mind begins to focus narrowly on immediate tasks. The world itself seems to slow, and the rhythm of chores mirrors this subtle deceleration. Every motion is precise, deliberate, conserving energy while maintaining vigilance. Outside, the wind whispers over rooftops and through skeletal trees, carrying faint traces of snow drifting over frozen ground. You glance through a window, observing the quiet village under the dim gray light, noting shadows stretching across snow-laden paths. Even in stillness, there is a constant awareness. The environment is patient, indifferent, but exacting. You feel its influence in the quiet tension that remains, shaping perception even as the body rests in small, controlled movements. The final tasks are completed slowly. Firewood stacked near hearths, ashes cleared from stoves, tools returned to storage, blankets adjusted for warmth. Villagers move almost silently, careful not to disturb the quiet stillness of the night. Each repeated gesture reinforces the soft vigilance of winter, a gentle pressure that shapes both mind and body. You are aware that even in these simple chores, the practice of endurance continues, teaching patience, attention, and measured energy. As the last movements conclude, the body begins its transition into rest. You notice the subtle relaxation of shoulders, the deepening of breath, the gentle settling of muscles. Eyes grow heavy, hands less steady, thoughts slower, as if the mind itself has learned the rhythm of the day and is preparing for the slow descent into night. The environment continues to press softly against awareness, but its influence is no longer sharp. It has become a quiet companion, a reminder of careful observation, patient endurance, and steady vigilance. Settling near the hearth or into layered blankets, you feel the weight of the day lift gently from limbs and spine. The village itself seems to mirror this motion. Cabins dimly lit, fires burning steadily, shadows folding into corners, and the wind whispering through the trees. Time stretches, measured only by the flicker of flame and the subtle movement of snow outside. There is calm in this repetition, and the body, at last, begins to respond to the soft lull of evening. You notice your mind drifting into reflection, recalling small details of the day. Measured chopping of wood, careful rationing of food, quiet vigilance of neighbors. These moments are familiar, repetitive, yet they bring a gentle awareness of continuity, reinforcing the rhythm of survival. The night is long, the wind persistent, yet the body moves into rest naturally, slowly, as though synchronized with the patient pulse of the village and the quiet insistence of winter itself. By the end of this evening, you understand a fundamental lesson. Survival is measured not only by preparation or labor, but by the deliberate slowing of body and mind, the quiet maintenance of warmth and provisions, and the persistent, gentle vigilance that carries through night and into sleep. The environment, patient and constant, continues its subtle instruction. Endurance is quiet, methodical, and unbroken. Night arrives quietly, folding the village into soft shadows that stretch across snow-laden rooftops and frost-covered streets. The wind hums gently through skeletal trees, carrying the soft rhythm of snow shifting across the frozen ground. There is no sudden darkness, no harsh cessation of light, only a gradual slowing, a patient curtain that draws the day to a close. You move deliberately, slowly, acutely aware of the long hours behind and the stillness ahead. Inside cabins, the fire burns low, embers glowing with a muted warmth. Villagers gather near the hearths, wrapping themselves in layers of wool, settling into benches and straw mats. Movements are careful, deliberate, adjusting blankets, shifting slightly to warm, cold feet, stacking embers to maintain a gentle heat. Even these small motions require attention. As the body has grown heavy from hours of labor and observation, muscles stiff and joints aching softly for repeated tasks. You feel the gentle pull of reflection as the day dissolves into night. Thoughts wander slowly through the routines, the measured labor, and the quiet vigilance of long winter hours. You recall the careful rationing of food, the stacking of firewood, the measured tending of animals. Each memory is a small exercise in patience, a quiet rehearsal of endurance that strengthens the mind while the body begins its natural slowing. Outside, shadows stretch and lengthen, blending with snow and frost. The skeletal trees sway lightly in the wind, their branches etched sharply against the darkened sky. Faint tracks of animals remain visible, partially obscured by drifting snow, hints of life that are both reassuring and a reminder of scarcity. You notice the soft tension that persists. The environment is calm, yet insistent, shaping awareness, demanding vigilance even in rest. Villagers speak rarely, in hushed tones, voices low and reflective. Words recount the passage of the day, small observations, brief instructions, or shared acknowledgement of the cold and the long hours. Silence dominates, punctuated only by the soft crackle of fire, the occasional sigh, or the subtle scrape of snow against doorways. You feel the weight of quiet, the slow accumulation of mental awareness, as attention cycles gently through small observations, careful reflections, and half-forgotten concerns. The body responds predictably to the long day and the muted light. Movements become slower, eyes heavier, and muscles soften as fatigue settles in. Each adjustment, shifting a blanket, leaning toward warmth, repositioning a log, requires slightly more effort, and you notice the gradual, cumulative weight of endurance pressing against limbs and spine. Even as the body tires, the mind remains attentive, observing faint changes in firelight, temperature, or wind. Sleep begins as a gentle descent, partial at first, tethered to the soft awareness that surrounds you. Dreams are muted, reflective of the day's monotony and careful observation. They fold lightly around small events, a measured scoop of grain, a subtle shift in snow drift, the faint movement of an animal outside. The world continues its quiet rhythm, unbroken, indifferent, and exacting. You notice how the mind remains slightly alert, the body slowly adapting, both participating in the soft, continuous vigilance that survival demands. Time stretches in a patient, unhurried continuum. Hours flow gently into one another, measured by the flicker of embers, the whisper of wind, and the subtle shifts of snow against roof and ground. You may wake briefly, sensing the chill, adjusting a blanket, moving a log closer to the hearth. But each act is deliberate, gentle, reinforcing the calm endurance of night. Reflection deepens as the night progresses. You think of past winters, of the patterns that repeat each year, of the slow lessons that shape both body and mind. You notice the subtle accumulation of fatigue and awareness, the careful balance of warmth, energy, and vigilance. Even in the absence of sudden threat, there is constant pressure, a soft insistence of environment and time that molds thought and movement alike. The village itself mirrors your experience. Cabins dimly lit by fading embers, streets empty, shadows lengthened, and snow drifting across rooftops. Small human figures are present, but insignificant against the vast, patient landscape. Wind hums softly through trees, snow shifts over frozen earth, and the quiet persistence of night presses gently, insistently, shaping the rhythm of mind and body. Gradually, awareness folds further inward. Movements slow almost imperceptibly. Thoughts trace familiar patterns without urgency, and the body surrenders fully to rest. Yet even in deep slumber, there's a faint tether to environment. The soft crackle of embers, the whisper of wind, the subtle shift of snow outside. The world continues its patient pressure, teaching endurance, patience, and quiet vigilance. By the final hours of night, a profound stillness emerges. The village, the environment, and the observers are all synchronized in soft, continuous rhythm. The long, repetitive days of winter have taught a quiet patience, the subtle shaping of perception, and the gentle calibration of body and mind. You understand now that survival in such a world is less about heroic action and more about enduring repetition, careful vigilance, and patient attention to subtle details. Morning will eventually arrive, gray and muted, and the cycle will begin anew. But in this moment, night remains unbroken. The fire burns softly, shadows stretch, wind whispers, and snow drifts with quiet persistence. The lessons of endurance, vigilance, and patient reflection are embedded deeply, preparing the mind and body to continue through the long winter days. The night draws to its end, not with suddenness, but with a gradual softening, a quiet exhalation of time. And you, wrapped in layers of warmth, in the presence of slow fires and muted shadows, feel the weight of survival, the patience of winter, and the gentle rhythm of enduring time. The night has deepened, folding over the village and draping the world in quiet shadows. Snow rests silently across rooftops and streets, softened by gentle drifts, the outlines of fences and trees blurred under its weight. The wind hums softly through skeletal branches, carrying a whisper of cold over the frozen landscape. In this stillness, you find a calm that is difficult to define, a gentle awareness of time, of environment, and of endurance. You reflect on the slow rhythm of the past days and nights, the careful preparation of food, the measured tending of fires, and the repeated observation of snow, wind, and sky. Each act, however small, has contributed to survival. It is not heroism that has preserved life here, but patience, the quiet, deliberate attention to small details, the gentle pacing of labor, the awareness of scarcity and environment. Outside, the snow continues its slow, unbroken descent. Shadows stretch across the village in muted shades of gray, and distant hills are softened beneath heavy white. The skeletal trees bend patiently under frost and ice, swaying slightly with the wind, as though reminding all who watch that endurance is a quiet companion, not a sudden force. You feel your own body mirrored in this environment, slow, deliberate, and patient, attuned to rhythms larger than yourself. You remember the gathering of supplies, the long nights that followed, and the soft, persistent vigilance that carried through the middle of winter. Each day, each hour, has demanded repetition, stacking wood, measuring food, tending fires, observing snow drifts, adjusting blankets. These acts, small as they are, form a chain of endurance, quietly linking mind, body, and environment. There's been no urgency, no dramatic turning point, only the patient pressure of survival pressing steadily against time. The village itself seems to breathe with the same rhythm. Cabins huddle in the soft glow of firelight. Chimneys release faint plumes of smoke, and shadows stretch across snow-laden streets. There is no rush, no alarm, just the constant awareness of what has been and what may come. Even in sleep, the mind remains tethered to soft vigilance, listening to the faint hiss of wind, noting the slow drift of snow across rooftops, observing the subtle movement of shadows by firelight. You notice how this winter has shaped perception. Small actions acquire weight, repetition becomes comfort, and patience is measured not in moments of excitement, but in hours of steady, careful attention. The quiet accumulation of these hours has built a rhythm of endurance, and within that rhythm, survival finds its quiet home. As you reflect further, the contrast with modern life becomes evident. Today, a threat is often sudden, urgent, and dramatic. Here, in the long winter, danger is slow, methodical, and indifferent. Scarcity, cold, and the quiet pressure of the environment are constant teachers, shaping thought, guiding action, and demanding patience. There is no triumphant conclusion, no immediate reward, only the subtle, enduring knowledge that careful vigilance preserves life over time. You sense the villagers' connection to this rhythm. Every small task, every measured gesture, every quiet observation is part of a tapestry woven from repeated effort and deliberate care. Even the silence, pervasive and patient, becomes a companion, guiding reflection and anchoring awareness in the steady pulse of survival. You feel it within yourself. The long accumulation of small attentions, the gentle persistence of endurance, the soft rhythm of living through winter. Time moves slowly, unbroken, yet full of meaning in its repetition. You feel the body's gentle fatigue, the mind's reflective calm, and the spirit's quiet attentiveness. The wind continues its steady hum through skeletal trees. Snow drifts shift imperceptibly, and shadows merge with night. These subtle motions mark the passage of hours, a reminder that survival is continuous, deliberate, and unhurried. You consider the lessons winter teaches. Heroism is not required here. Instead, patience, attention, and the willingness to endure monotony shape life. Scarcity, cold, and darkness are not overcome suddenly, but managed carefully, measured in each small action repeated faithfully over days and weeks. In these repetitions, there's a profound understanding of endurance, slow, deliberate, and unbroken. The long night stretches on, almost endless, and you feel the gradual softening of awareness. Movements slow further, breath deepens, muscles relax, and thoughts drift without urgency. Even in this stillness, you remain connected to environment and routine, tethered to vigilance that is now gentle, habitual, and reflective. Outside, the village is quiet, frozen, and patient. Snow continues to drift, wind whispers through trees, and rooftops glimmer faintly under muted moonlight. Small human figures are present, but secondary to the vast, indifferent landscape. Observation, endurance, and reflection continue subtly, shaping perception without urgency, teaching the patient rhythm of survival under slow pressure. The final hours of night pass softly. The fire burns steadily, shadows stretch and contract, and snow drifts across frozen paths. You notice how minor adjustments, rotating logs, shifting blankets, listening to wind, maintain comfort and safety without demanding effort. Each small gesture is a continuation of the day's rhythm, part of the soft, unbroken pulse of winter survival. Eventually, dawn will arrive, gray and muted, and the cycle of long winter days will begin anew. But in this moment, night remains unbroken. You feel the weight of time, the patient pressure of environment, and the quiet knowledge that survival is sustained by repetition, vigilance, and careful attention. There is no final drama, no sudden triumph, only the enduring calm of a world shaped by winter, snow, and patience. You understand now the subtle endurance of life in such conditions. There is strength in patience, wisdom in quiet vigilance, and resilience in repeated, deliberate action. Snow, wind, and darkness are constant companions, teaching the mind and body how to persist, adapt, and endure. This is the rhythm of survival, slow, continuous, and profoundly quiet. And so, the winter night persists. Cabins are darkened, fires glow softly, and villagers rest in patient stillness. Snow drifts across the village in gentle, silent motion. Wind hums through skeletal trees. Shadows stretch and soften. Time passes without sudden change, yet each hour carries meaning. You lie still, enveloped in layers, aware of warmth, and tethered to the soft vigilance that has shaped your thoughts and actions. In this quiet, reflective space, you may drift fully into sleep. And when you wake, the lessons of endurance, patience, and careful attention remain, softly embedded in memory. You carry forward the understanding that life in winter is measured not by dramatic feats, but by sustained calm, deliberate care, and the gentle passage of time under patient, indifferent forces. The long night continues, vast, cold, and patient. And you, enveloped in warmth and shadow, are part of its quiet rhythm, enduring, observing, and moving slowly through the patient pulse of survival.